everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the 10 Adventures Adventure More webinar series. My name is Alex from the 10 Adventures team, and I'm joined today by Ben Johnson from Mountain Madness Tours. Thanks a lot for being here, Ben. We're really excited to get to chat with you about this amazing bike route that is from Jasper to Banff. It's one of the, I think, one of the most scenic ones that we definitely offer, and it's one of the most requested. So thanks a lot for being here today.
Excellent. Yeah, great to meet everyone. And yeah, excited to pass on some information.
Yeah, for sure. It's like I said, like the scenery along this route is just absolutely stunning. Personally, I haven't biked it myself. I'm not much of a cyclist. I do have one in the shed. It doesn't get taken out too often. But I have driven along the Ice Fields Parkway, and it is an absolutely beautiful stretch of road. You know, just the mountain scenery around you, the forest, it's just, you can really lose yourself in that landscape. And I think it's something that a lot of people look for when they kind of choose to plan a bike tour is, you know, they want to immerse themselves in one of these incredible settings. And I think that this is something that it offers. So I'm really excited to dive in here. First, just to kind of go over a little bit of an intro to the ride itself, you know, what makes it so special, a little bit about the itinerary. And then, you know, we can dive into some more discussion topics, some questions about the route specifically, maybe some of the things that kind of go into it, and then some pre-submitted questions from audience members as well. I guess let's just start out with an overview, just to kind of give everyone a good idea of what this route's all about. Like I said, I haven't done it, so I can't really speak to everything about this, but maybe, Ben, you could just kind of touch on, you know, everything about this route, why it's such a popular route, you know, just kind of touch on all the basics here.
Excellent. Yes. So, yeah, the Ice Fields Parkway, of course, goes between Jasper, the town of Jasper, in Jasper National Park, pops over the bow summit into the Samoapta Pass into Banff National Park. It goes through the actual Ice Fields Parkway ends at Lake Louise, and then from there we carry on the Valley Parkway, which gets you into the town of Banff. And then there's the Legacy Trail, which takes you on to the town of Canmore if you want a little extra distance. And yeah, as you've mentioned, you know, lots of, you know, probably millions of people drive that route over the years, and it's great to see from the car, but it's even better by bike. And you just get to go a little bit slower. You've got no roof in the way, so you get to see all the scenery and you hear all the sounds and the wildlife, and you know, it's much more, you know, you're right in the middle of it rather than scooting by it at 100k an hour.
I think that's kind of a big element of it, right? You have the open road in front of you, you have the mountains all around you. Like you mentioned, you can hear the wildlife. It's just kind of, it's a whole lot more of an immersive experience. Like I said, I've driven along the road and it was beautiful in itself, so I can only imagine just kind of being there, right, immersed in the setting. It sounds like an incredible ride. You know, also another thing that you touched on is you're kind of hitting all these different you know, little mountain towns along the way, these tourist destinations that people are always kind of talking about and people flock to, whether it's during the summer or the winter season. So you have Lake Louise, you have Banff, you know, these incredible little towns that are just, you know, full of outdoor activities and incredible scenery in their own right. So it's kind of, you're hitting all those little spots along the route as well. And I'm sure that that's something that makes it really unique and really draws in a lot of folks as well.
Definitely, yes. Yeah, you're getting all the tourist destinations and then the nice quiet bit in the middle, rather than spending all your time at the hot spots with all the crowds. You get some nice quiet time in between.
You kind of, yeah, you get the best of both worlds. You get to experience those, and then also, yeah, you get to remove yourself from it once it gets to be a little too much, I can imagine.
That's it, yeah.
So, I mean, we kind of just touched on this. You mentioned, you know, the feel of the ride, but are there any things that make the ride really unique, really special? There are a lot of cycling routes all over the world that might go through kind of mountain terrain, mountain landscapes. Is there anything that makes this particularly unique and special?
Yeah, it's just it's really the perfect cycling road. I think you know, it just combines. It's hard to narrow it down to just a couple of things, but like as you see on the photo there, yeah, you've got a 3,000 meter plus mountain just coming straight out of the road, and it's brand new pavement now. It took them a while, but they finally repaved the whole Ice Fields Parkway, and there's a really nice shoulder, so it's a really good riding road. There's no trucks allowed, no transport trucks, so really you're just dealing with tourist traffic, which in the mornings is not too bad. It does get a little busier in the afternoons, but nice wide shoulder. It's really makes for safe riding in such a spectacular surroundings. In what Canada's best national parks all in one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that's incredible too, is that you kind of have this combination. You have the incredible national park scenery, the wildlife, all of that. But then, like you mentioned, that updated infrastructure, I'm sure goes a long way. I'm sure for quite a while, maybe it wasn't, I don't want to say the best riding road, but if it was kind of getting a little long in the tooth, it definitely needed to be done. And I think, for anybody who's maybe more of at like an introductory level, or maybe they haven't done a longer bike tour, this might be a good kind of entry point, just because of the fact that the road is a little bit safer. There isn't that truck traffic. So there's not as much throughways kind of, in that sense. And then also just the actual infrastructure, the road itself. You're not going on some bumpy pothole filled road, which I can imagine is a good comfort to a lot of people.
That's right. And then the speed limit's 90 an hour for the cars, so it does sort of, it's not like riding on the main highway between Edmonton and Calgary where everyone's going 120. So it does bring that speed of the traffic around you down a little bit to a more manageable level.
Yeah, it's not like you're exactly making your way along the Autobahn or something like that. There's cars ripping past you.
That's right. Yeah.
So just looking at the itinerary itself, we have a little bit of a map here just kind of showcasing it. And I know you kind of touched on the points. Maybe you can kind of just discuss the way that the tour kind of progresses again, and just kind of, taking from Jasper all the way through to Banff. And then obviously you can see in the bottom right corner, there's Canmore there. But just kind of talking through the itinerary a little bit, and maybe, each of the days along the trip.
Definitely, yes. So, typically people will get themselves to Edmonton the day before, and then we'll pick them up from their hotels downtown on a Friday morning. It's a 4-hour drive to Jasper, so we get there at about 1 p.m. Get ready and hit the road there from Becker's Chalets, which is just outside Jasper. That takes us out of the main busy town site and gives us a bit more room to move around, set up the bikes. And that day it's 50 kilometers in the afternoon to St. Falls Resort. So that's a nice little hotel on the Ice Fields Parkway. And along the way you get to see a few waterfalls, and I guess we'll probably cover some of the spots late in a further question. But then we stay there the night. Then day two, all we got to do is just get up, eat, ride, rest, look at scenery. It's 100 kilometers, which sounds a bit daunting to some, but we got all day to do it. A regular seasoned rider might complete that distance in 4 or 5 hours, but we have all day, so it really does make it manageable for everyone. And that gets us past the Columbia Ice Fields, over some Opta Pass, and back down again to Saskatchewan River Crossing. And there's a nice hotel there called the Crossing Resort. That's day two. Day three, again, it's about 85 kilometers to Lake Louise. We've got to go up and over Bow Pass that day, so that's the challenge for the day. But lots of scenery to break that up. Waterfowl lakes, Pato Lake, Bow Lake, all that good stuff. And then we get to Lake Louise, and we have an early dinner that night, and then we usually drive people up to Moraine Lake to have a quick look. Once all the crowds have gone, now they've got a new permitting system, so you're not actually allowed up there unless you're on a shuttle bus. But thankfully, I managed to snag myself a special business license add-on, and we can drive you up after dinner at about 7 o'clock. Last year we were the only ones there at that time, so it's amazing. All the shuttles have stopped by then. And then the last day, it's probably after all the hard work you've done before that, the last day is a real treat. It's 60 kilometers of just gentle cruising, no real big hills to speak of, an almost car-free road. You'll only see a handful of cars all day. on the Valley Parkway, and that'll get you to Banff. And then if you still feel like you want a little bit more, you can go another 20 kilometers to Canmore on the Legacy Trail. And that usually, that's the fourth day, so that brings us through to Monday. And we'd usually be wrapping up at about sort of 1 to 2 p.m. We can leave people in Banff and Canmore, or we can shuttle people on to Calgary, where they take their outbound flights, and then we continue back to Edmonton. So if anyone if anyone's coming from Edmonton, we can obviously get you back to Edmonton. And likewise, if people wanted to fly out of Edmonton, that's an option. But Calgary just saves you a few hours in the van.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a good mixture of distances along the route when it comes to the different days. You mentioned, one was around 100 kilometers, 85. Then the last one kind of is a nice little bit of a cakewalk, I guess, with a little bit more gentle cruising. And then obviously there's some climbs as well in there. So it sounds like there's a lot of good variety between the days along the route. And then not only that, but a good variety in the scenery as well.
Definitely.
In addition to, you mentioned having that special business license going up to Moraine Lake. I'm sure, once you're getting towards the end of that, it's kind of nice just to maybe, get out of the saddle, go on like a little bit of almost an excursion for a part of the day. So you can kind of disconnect a little bit from the ride, but also still immerse yourself in the scenery. So that sounds like an awesome addition that you guys have kind of added onto the trip. It's a good kind of segue, I guess, into the difficulty level along the route, because you mentioned some of the distances. Maybe there's some climbs as well, so there's some elevation involved. But how difficult is this ride? Is it something that can be kind of approachable for maybe somebody who hasn't done their first bike tour yet?
Yes, definitely. I'm very tempted to say absolutely anyone could do this. I really haven't seen anyone not do it yet that's joined the tour. And the thing that makes it doable for everyone, there's a couple of things. One is the support. I'm following you, not following you. I'm leapfrogging you in the van. So you'll see me every half an hour or so parked on the side of the road. So there's that support, whether you need something or not. You can grab it from the van. If you're not feeling the love for it that day, if the weather's bad, just jump in the van and take a ride with us. The second part is there's always an e-bike option. We do rent e-bikes, so a lot of people are doing that these days. So that just obviously gets you up and over those hills, flattens all that stuff out for you, and makes it a good old cruise. Then you've got so the impression most people have of the Ice Fields Parkway is that because you're going through the mountains, is that it's epic uphills and downhills, and it's, you're going to be pushed to your limit every day. And although that's true in some parts, it's really only quite a short part of the day overall. And to give you an example, I would say most of the route, because it's a pass, the pass is going through the mountains, not over the top of the mountains. So
that's a good point, yeah.
So, I mean, most of the gradients are 1%, 2%. There's really not much flat. We call them Rocky Mountain flats. It'll look flat, but it'll actually be 1% uphill. So there's just deceiving stuff like that. It's 1%, 2%, sometimes 3%. And then you've got probably 3 big challenges through the ride. You've got one hill of 3 kilometers, and it's about 8% average. So that's definitely a pinch. Most people feel that in the legs. And there's the way to tackle that is you just break it up into 3 1-kilometer sections. There's a really good, you can see there, right, is Stutfield Glacier. That's about 1 kilometer into that hill. And then about 2 kilometers into the hill is Tangle Falls, another spot you can stop and check out the view. And then the top is the Brewster Skywalk tourist attraction. I can't stop there, but you guys in the bikes can pull in and check out the view. And so that's the way to take that climb. Other than that, that's on day 2. Day 3, you've got to get over Bow Pass, which again is that one was split up into 2 main climbs. The first climb being about 5 kilometers long, and that's about average of 6%. You know, it's quite a lot of it's 3, 4, 5, and some of it's 6. And then the second part of that climb, after about 30 kilometers of undulating terrain, is an 8-kilometer climb of closer to 6% average, with a few as I call them, kickers at the end, where it goes up a little bit steeper. But that one's not so much steep, but it's just long and gradual. So quite often people will prefer the short, steep one, and then other people will prefer the long, gradual one. And there's no telling which one you like until you're on it. But
yeah, you kind of have to be midway through that climb to realize whether it's you're into it or not, right?
That's it. But yeah, on a 300-kilometer ride, you could bring it down to about 16 kilometers of really challenging stuff. The rest is all doable.
Yeah, so that sounds really approachable then, especially even for I don't want to say beginners, but people who maybe haven't done a longer bike tour like this. And it also sounds like you kind of intermittently have some really nice views to distract you from the difficult bits as well, right? I can imagine that's something that would really kind of help out. You're working through a tough climb, and then it's like, well, at least there's something nice to look at. So that kind of sounds like it's a little bit of a distraction as well.
Definitely, it's not like sitting on a spinning bike for an hour, with, looking
staring at the wall in front of you.
Yeah, looking at your basement wall. And like I say, after that 3-kilometer climb, you see me twice in that climb. So you stop in, you get rid of a layer, you put one on, you stop and rest, look at the view. It's not like you have to grind out all those climbs from start to finish. So you don't have to time trial it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing that you kind of touched on is people think of the Rockies, they think of this, vast, rugged expanse where it's, it's all ridiculous terrain and stuff. But a lot of this route does go through, through passes and everything. So it's not, like you said, it's not like you're scaling a mountain or anything like that. It's through the more navigable parts, right? That's why they kind of build roads there, which makes sense. But then also that kind of ties into people's perception of the mountains and weather as well. Because I know obviously it can be a little bit unpredictable getting up in the mountains. What's the best time of year, would you say, to go on this ride, just in terms of weather and kind of predicting having the best possible experience? Yeah.
So, I mean, our season generally runs from June, start of June, through till the early September. And these days, very, very few people sign up to the early June tours. So probably about middle of June is typically when we get our first tour underway. And really, those first couple of tours can be great. They will be a little bit cooler in the mornings, but during the day they can be perfect. It actually can be the best time of year to ride, because you've still got like that shot shows you on the screen. You still got the snow in the mountains. You get those brilliant blue skies. You can still get 20 degrees during the day, so it can be a magic time to ride, and there's less traffic in those June tours. So then July and August, I would say, is our, it gives you the best chance of stable weather. I mean, anything can happen in the Rockies at any time, but July and August give you a better chance of stable weather, warmer temperatures, and it is a little bit busier on the roads because the tourist traffic's there. So you just there's a few trade-offs. Come early season, late season, less traffic, slightly unpredictable weather. Come in the middle, that's more stable, a little bit busier.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same pretty much for any mountain activities if you're ever looking to get out in the Rockies, minus, skiing, snowboarding, any of that kind of stuff, which obviously you have to do in the winter. But it's more so, if you're ever going to look hiking, trekking, climbing, any of that kind of stuff. It's kind of that same window more or less where you're going in the peak summer season to make sure that you have the best possible chance of, not encountering too much rain or any of the shoulder season snows or anything like that. It's just, safe bet, go in the summer.
Gotcha. Yep.
All Right. Moving along, some of the route highlights. I know you kind of started to talk a little bit about them at the beginning and kind of held back. So maybe you can share some of the incredible highlights that are along this route, because I know that there is so much to look at, so much to see. Maybe just share your experience, some of your top favorites in terms of the highlights.
Definitely. Now, there's so many, so I'll just rattle them off quick and tell me if you want me to pause on any of them. That day one, you've got Athabasca Falls, which is a great one to see. We have our first rest stop of the day. That's about halfway through the 50K ride that day. When we get to St. Falls, the resort there, you just go for a 1 kilometre walk up before or after dinner, if you like. And you get to the St. Falls itself, which is this wonderful waterfall that sort of spits through a hole in this narrow canyon. And there's a nice walk you can take that goes all the way, it follows it all the way down the stream, where it falls down another 3 or 4 waterfalls after that. So they're 2 good ones from day one. Day 2, you've got that Stutfield Glacier that we mentioned as you go up the big climb. That's a big glacier coming off the side of the Columbia Ice Fields. You've got Tangle Falls, which is a big waterfall on your left, about 2/3 the way up that big climb. And then that gets you through to the Columbia Ice Fields Visitors Centre there, where we have lunch. And from there, you just basically a 360-degree view of goodness. And you've got three big glaciers: Dome Glacier, Athabasca Glacier. Oh, and sorry, Stutfield, which is just back a little bit. But you've got big glaciers coming, right in front of you that you can look at while you have your lunch. And then we pop over the top of Bow Pass. And the descent, you've got a 16-kilometre downhill there, which is pretty epic. So you get to feel the wind in your face on that downhill. That's an experience in itself. And when we get to Saskatchewan River Crossing, again, that's it's a 360-degree view of awesome mountains. You can never build a hotel at these locations these days. It's just it's a small miracle that there's any hotels allowed in these spots. But we'll take advantage of them. And just down the road from that is Vistaya Canyon. And quite often we go for a walk after dinner down that one. It's a 2-kilometre walk to see this really nice canyon that's been eroded over millions of years. And up over, heading towards Bow Pass, you've got Waterfowl Lake at Mount Kefren, which is this wonderful, perfect pyramid, triangle-shaped Matterhorn-looking mountain with a wonderful, glacial lake below it. But, if you get lucky and the wind is down, you get these awesome reflections. You get the double mountain sort of going on. Shortly after that, you get Snowbird Glacier, which is this big glacier coming down the side of the mountain with wings that looks like a bird, as it suggests. You get to Bow Pass, and then we take it's a bonus round for an extra chocolate pretzel, but it's an extra kilometre on top of the long climb, but it's totally worth it. You take the side trip up to the Pado Lake viewpoint, and we usually have lunch up there because it's a bit quieter than Bow Lake on the other side. So we usually have lunch there. You go for a quick 1 kilometre walk down to the viewpoint, check out Pado Lake, which is probably one of the most photographed lakes in the park system.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And then from there, just down the road, you start this, basically there's a few lumps in the way, but there's, basically 25, 30 kilometres of downhill all the way to Lake Louise. And we start by going past Bow Lake, Bow Glacier, Crowfoot Glacier, keep on going down the hill, and you basically get to Lake Louise, where of course all the usual stuff is Lake Louise itself, Moraine Lake. The last day we were on the Valley Parkway, and we go through. There's a place called Johnson Canyon. We don't usually have time to visit it, but it's definitely a place to come back to. afterwards if you're staying a bit longer. Um, and then we get into Banff itself. And as you're entering Banff, you go, you ride on, there's a little bit of the Legacy Trail that starts just before Banff, and it continues again after. But you go along Cascade Lakes, I think it's called, which is just underneath Mount Rundle. So you've got this massive mountain, above Banff itself, and then you've got this wonderful lakes, and you're on a car-free road, basically, riding into Banff.
That sounds like, honestly, an incredible spread of highlights to see. Like, it's, could have stopped you at any point there, and it just kept going. Like, it's never ending, it sounds like. So if you love, glaciers, mountains, winding rivers, all this kind of scenery, like, obviously this is the route for you. And you can tell, obviously, by everything that's along the route, you can tell why this is just such a popular ride, because there's just countless things to look at. So it sounds like it's absolutely mind blowing. And I might have to pick it up and do it myself. I think, I don't know, next time I'm out in the Rockies for, connecting with the work team, maybe I'll have to, tack on a couple extra days and come join you.
I definitely recommend it. Yeah. Like I say, like, you don't really have to be a fitness fanatic. You don't have to, train 3 hours. I know this is a question probably later, but 3 hours a day or anything. If you know what a bike looks like, if you've ridden one a few times in your life, if you commute to work, if you're active in any other sport, like if you're into triathlons, if you're into running, if you're into just going to the gym, you'll be fit enough to do this. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So I might have to take my training wheels off, but you're saying I can definitely do it. We'll get out there and I'll join you one of these days for sure.
Definitely.
In terms of the equipment itself, speaking of training wheels, I guess that's a good tie-in. What kind of bikes are best for the route? I know a lot of people look to plan this route themselves as well, so not necessarily looking to join a tour, but they think, okay, this is something that's accessible. I have a bike. I do bike tours all the time, and I just want to kind of tackle it on my own. What kind of bike is kind of best for the route? You mentioned earlier that e-bikes are becoming more popular, and I know we see that with a lot of our other bike tours as well, just because they are a great entry-level kind of way to really reduce climbs, reduce distances, essentially. Like you're not putting in as much work. But what, in your opinion, like what's the best kind of bike to use in this route?
Yeah, so if you're doing it yourself, of course, you're more on the touring bike, say. So you've got to have a bike that's a bit stronger, a bit wider tires, so that you can cope with carrying panniers and all your luggage. And there's campgrounds along the way and wilderness hostels and stuff like that. But if you're joining a tour, then we go, obviously carry all the luggage for you. So you can get away with a proper road bike. People that bring their own quite often, have really fancy ones. The full carbon fiber, skidding tire, drop bar racing bikes. But then there's a whole range of, road, cross, gravel bikes with slick tires. People bring their commuter bikes sometimes. Anything with gears. And the only thing I recommend is you put slick tire. If you have a mountain bike, say, put slick tires on so that you're not pushing all that rubber over the smooth road. Yeah,
absolutely. So pretty much anything goes as long as there's two wheels, even maybe three wheels. You can get away with it.
That's right. Yeah, maybe not a tricycle, but I guess you could do one of those. I've seen recumbents, and definitely a 3-wheel machine could work.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you've got the e-bikes. If you are renting from us, we have a fleet of Kona Libre gravel bikes with slick tires.
Nice.
And what we found with that, it was a bit of a change because we used to always have proper road bikes, but the gravel bikes just have the single cog on the front and a selection of gears at the back, and it still gives you that same range to get up the hills. You sacrifice a little bit of speed going downhill, but for most people, gravity will look after that. And what that does though is it simplifies the whole gear changing process. If you're slightly unfamiliar with road bikes, sometimes there's just too much choice. 2 or 3 rings on the front, and then 10, 12 rings on the back, and which some gears are the same as other gears, and am I cross chaining? Is it making a rubbing noise because I'm in the wrong combination? Yeah. Forget all that. Just look at the view. You got one lever on the handlebar to look after the back gears. The front is fixed. And yeah, we found that's been a very good approach. And they're a little bit more comfortable geometry as well. Instead of being a true racing, geometry, they're a bit more upright, a little bit more comfortable. They still have the drop bars and slightly wider tires, although they're still slicks. Not far off a road bike, really.
For sure. I think that one thing you guys have probably, really figured out and nailed down to a science is the thing, anything that's complex inherently, it becomes more difficult when problems arise, right? And I think that, bikes can be this way also, especially if you were planning on doing this route on your own. The last thing you want to do is be, in the middle of a 100-kilometer stretch and your bike breaks down and you don't have, the means to be able to fix your bike, especially if it's something that's a little bit more complex. And I guess that's where you guys come in with the support as well. You kind of touched on it earlier of, if you weren't really feeling the day or something and you needed a ride midway through a stage, but also there's the element of, you're midway through, you're 50 kilometers into a 100-kilometer stage and your bike breaks down. It's nice knowing you have that support behind you where they can come repair the bike, swap a bike out, do whatever you need to do. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the level of support you guys offer and how you can help riders out in the middle of the ride.
Yeah, definitely. So quite often we definitely, we'll have an extra bike on board sometimes too, but and we've got spare wheels and everything. Quite often, the most common thing that happens is flat tires. You just get a puncture, or someone brings their own bike and it's the tires are worn out or something. But we have a whole bunch of spare tires, tubes, wheels. Even it's quite often if you have a puncture on the side of the road, most people will have a two-way radio because there's no cell reception in the national parks. So you just call me on the radio. 5-10 minutes later, I'll be next to you, and I can just grab a wheel from the trailer, swap it out, and you'll be back on the road in 5 minutes, and then I'll fix you a flat tire at the next rest stop, which is there's probably about 3 or 4 rest stops during the day, lunch or snacks or check-in points, and then we have a full selection of tools and equipment, and, a limited amount of spares for other things if you have any minor difficulties with your own bike.
I think that's a big weight off most people's shoulders, really. It's not only are you not, carrying, all your luggage and gear and all that kind of stuff, but just knowing that somebody's behind you and is able to kind of help you out whenever you need it, has the tools necessary to fix the bike. I'm sure that's, the biggest kind of safety net that you could need, which is fantastic. You touched on this earlier as well, just a little bit, but training for this route. So if you were somebody who's, let's say, not really super into bike touring, maybe this is your first or second trip or something, like what kind of training would you recommend for something like this?
Yeah, like I say, probably the more familiar you are with biking, the easier you'll find it. It's more really the butt that hurts people on a bike tour. Most people can spin their legs all day and they've got the muscle and the power and the endurance to get through that. But most people's butts hurt at the end of the day. So the more you ride a bike, I guess, the more prepared or immune you are to that happening. And obviously cycling uses slightly different muscles than other sports. So the more familiar you are with cycling, the easier, the more fun you'll have, I guess.
So nothing too hardcore. I guess it's kind of one of the parallels I kind of draw with that is for a lot of our hiking or trekking tours, a lot of people tend to look at just the distance or the elevation and they go, oh, that's not too bad. I can definitely do that. It's not necessarily the day itself. It's kind of when you stack day 2 and then day 3 on top of that, day 4. It's the successive days where it just kind of piles up. That's where you really start to feel it. And especially like you mentioned, if your butt's getting a little sore after day 1, imagine at the end of day 2 or day 3, that's where it really starts to kind of kick in. So it's more so the fact that you're doing this for a couple days on end as opposed to getting out there for one single ride.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's probably the best training you could do if you are like say if you for the 100-kilometer day, if you do a 50-kilometer ride a couple of times a week, once a week or something even, and you can do that reasonably comfortably, you can do the 100, on a 1 day thing where you've got amazing views and full support. But then, like you say, maybe in a training sort of program that you've put together for yourself, you start to ease into trying to do 50 kilometers 1 day and then do 50 kilometers the next day and see how that feels. And then, gradually build up to doing, maybe you start with, if you're only just beginning, you start with 10K, but try and do 10K 4 days in a row. And then, a couple of weeks down the track, try and do 20K 4 days in a row. And that could be an idea as you get closer.
Just building up to kind of start to simulate what it could be like on the ride, right?
Yeah.
So one other thing, I know you kind of also alluded to this a little bit, in terms of where to fly into. So the route obviously starts in Jasper and goes to Banff. A couple options, I guess. The one that might make the most sense is Edmonton. But in your opinion, like if people were flying from out of Canada, from within Canada, wherever it may be, what's the best place to fly into to start this route?
Yeah, so we're based in Edmonton. So definitely logistically works best if you fly into Edmonton the night before and then fly out of Calgary at the end of the trip. Having said that, there is other options. If you are sort of self, if this is only a part of a bigger trip, you might have a car with you or something, and maybe you're doing traveling in Banff before the trip, and then you could leave your car in Banff somewhere. That's got challenges too. But let's say you get yourself to Banff, you could take a shuttle up to Jasper and meet us in Jasper. So if you have your own way of getting to Jasper, you can definitely meet us in Jasper. And we just pick you up at lunchtime on Friday and get you to the start point. And then likewise at the end of the trip, when we get to Banff or Canmore, we're totally happy to drop you at a hotel in town. And then you could, there's lots of shuttles options. There's Banff Airport is a good option to get you to Calgary Airport after we leave you. So you could stay in the Banff area longer, and then you could also fly out of Edmonton if you didn't mind the extra couple of hours in the van back to town. And then we usually get to Calgary Airport by about 3 in the afternoon. So book your flights after 5 on Monday, or you can stay at a hotel. We can drop you off at the airport hotel and fly out the next day.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so if you're looking to do this, if you're traveling from outside of Alberta, definitely come into Edmonton. It'll make everyone's life a whole lot easier. But there's a lot of different options no matter where you come from. You can start it all over the place. That's good to know. In terms of a route like this, one of the big kind of things with a lot of our other adventures, a lot of hiking tours, trekking tours, all that kind of stuff, people love to take photos. And I can imagine on a bike that can be a little bit difficult. You're either climbing up a grade or you're going downhill at a fast speed. Last thing you want to be doing is juggling a camera. People might not have access to something like a GoPro that they can strap on. What's kind of how can riders remember their adventure going on a trip like this? Make sure they get photos and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So loving your presentation here with all the photos, but these are kind of examples of all the photos I take of people as you ride along. So
I wouldn't say they're examples; they are your photos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So because I support the ride from the van. Like a lot of bike tours have cyclists, the guides with the group, and just the way I'm set up, I do it a bit differently. It comes with various advantages. A guide, an on-road guide can only be with one person at one time, whereas I can sort of be a little bit everywhere with the van. So that enables me to jump ahead, take photos of you riding past. Everyone goes past, and I get to count everyone, make sure everyone's still there, and then drive ahead to the next location to take more photos as you ride past. And then I've got all our rest stops, and snack stops, and checkpoints are at nice locations like Tangle Falls that you can see. So in addition to watching out for you, making sure you're going okay on the climbs, I can snap a photo of you riding past Tangle Falls and put a wall on the USB for you to take home at the end of the tour.
That's awesome. And it's, not only do you have that level of support kind of looking out for you, but, you can also get some pretty sweet action shots in there, which is good. A lot of times people only get photos when, maybe they stop for a rest or stop for lunch, like you mentioned. But it's really great that you can kind of get those in between shots. I mean, I don't know who this is riding in this photo, but like they look like they're having a fantastic time. And just that shot with the waterfall in the back looks incredible. So it's really nice that you're able to do that and provide that as a service for people. Looking towards the end of the ride, so obviously we have a lovely shot of Banff here. There's a lot to do there, a lot of different outdoor activities, and you're also in the time of the year where it's kind of peak hiking season and all that kind of stuff. Are there any kind of activities or adventures in and around Banff to do maybe once you've wrapped up the tour?
Yeah, so again, it's quite a long list, but I can rattle off a few.
Just a couple, just give us the cliff notes of a few.
Definitely. But mostly the thing to consider is when we get to Banff, because we're quite often continuing on to Canmore, we don't actually have a lot of time in Banff at all. Generally, we just go skipping through and on to Canmore and we pack up the tour and go. So if you do want to spend more time in Banff, definitely look at extending your trip and stay in Banff for Canmore to come back and do these activities. Because generally on the tour, we sort of just do the cycling bit.
Yeah.
But if you were to stay longer, you could always go back to Johnson Canyon and hike that. That's a really good, popular hike along the Valley Parkway, halfway to Lake Louise. There's the gondola that gets you up the top of the mountain there overlooking Banff. This Tunnel Mountain is a great hike, which gives you a really good view of Banff from above. You've got the waterfalls there, a golf course if you're into golfing. You can make your way to Sunshine, which is a ski resort in the winter. There's also a gondola that opens up a whole bunch of hiking in that area. And then you've got Mount Norquay, which is actually pretty much the picture there, looking straight ahead. And you can do a bunch of hikes up there. Via Ferrata, which is like assisted climbing, basically, with bolts and steel ropes and you can harness up. It's a guided thing that they look up here. Just around the corner is Lake Minnewanka, and there's a really good loop. Sometimes it depends on the group. We sort of just mix it up. Definitely custom tours. We can ride around that Lake Minnewanka. It's about a 20k loop, and we could always do that instead of Canmore. So there's options there. Once you get to Canmore, there's the Canmore Nordic Centre. If you're into mountain biking or hiking or any type of outdoor activity, that's a spot to go. And just down the road from that, if you're looking at a longer ride, you could go to the Kananaskis country, which is another provincial park. But there's also another road called the Highwood Pass. That's the highest paved road in Canada. Just less than 100 kilometres from Canmore. So sometimes when we've done custom tours, we can always do the Jasper Banff thing and then extend it by 2 or 3 days, stay in Jasper a night instead of just getting there and leaving, and then stay in Banff or Canmore a night, and then we can go on to Kananaskis and go over Highwood Pass to Longview. Yeah, really, there's lots of options. If you have a bigger group, like 6 or more people, we can customize anything and add all these extra activities into the actual tour.
Yeah, so it sounds like in addition to the nearly endless supply of amazing scenery, there's also a nearly endless supply of additional adventures that you can do. You'll just need to tack a little bit of extra time on the end after your tour if you were looking to kind of hang around Banff and explore that area, but tons to do. I know I've been there. There's plenty of hikes, so it's a great place to explore for sure. Last question I have for you here, Ben, at least the last one I have before we get to the audience questions. If you were to look back, I know you've done this route, probably like hundreds, thousands of times. I don't know what it would be, but if you were to look back at the first time you did it, what's one word you would say would describe doing this ride from Jasper to Banff?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I don't think I can narrow it down to one. And
I figured as much.
And sometimes you just start sprouting off words, and you know, they're all sort of overused words, I guess. Epic, stunning, bucket. It's a bucket list ride for sure. That's what everyone says. Mind blowing, all that stuff could be true. Challenging, like socially as well for a ride like this. You're getting to meet a whole bunch of new people, and everyone's got interesting stories. So it can be a really that alone can be more than the riding for a lot of people. It's just getting to meet a whole bunch of new friends that they sometimes keep in touch with for the rest of their lives after the tour. So
so it's kind of a life-changing thing in a few different ways. You get to kind of connect not only with the landscape, connect with yourself probably as you're cycling, but also connect with other people that you haven't met, but also who have similar interests. That's actually awesome. I hadn't really thought about that element, but yeah, there's just, I guess it's just memorable, right? Like it's something you'll never forget for the rest of your life. And just looking at all these photos and stuff that obviously you guys have taken from all the tours that you've done, it just looks like an incredible experience. It looks like everyone on the tours is having the time of their life, and I think that's something really to take away from it is just you can't nail down one word. I think that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah, and every tour, even though it's the same tour over and over, different people, different weather, different circumstances, different stories from everyone. Every tour is completely different.
Looking at some of the audience questions, so we did have a few that were submitted beforehand. The first one here is, are there any economical places to stay along the route? So I would assume that's from somebody who's looking to plan it themselves. They're kind of looking at maybe more kind of, I don't know, budget hotels or just places that aren't, exorbitantly expensive, but any economical places you can think of?
Yeah, so there's the tour we use stays at three different hotels, as you saw. And that just, we've found over time, that's the best way to do it because they have showers, they have restaurants on site, breakfast and dinner, and all that stuff. But yeah, if you're looking to do it maybe yourself, I used to do a combination tour. You could take people to the wilderness hostels as well, and the hotels because they're not far apart. But it just logistically it got too tricky, so we just do hotels now. But if you were doing it yourself, wilderness hostels are a great option. They're a warm bed, bunk beds, shared dorms, but they are fantastic. And some of them have wood-fired saunas. Some of them, most of them are solar powered now. One of them's even powered by a little turbine they put in the creek. So there's lots of feel-good stuff to do with the wilderness hostels. They're a lot smaller, so you're not getting those big sort of hotel crowds. Obviously, cook your own dinners and stuff. But a very well worth back to basics approach. Even if you're getting supported by family and friends or something, because hotels definitely are going up in price these days. I mean, just an example. I mean, Lake Louise is almost $500 a night now, the cheapest place. So
crazy.
Yeah, it's it's a bit brutal out there, but your hostels are more friendly on the pricing for sure.
Yeah, and I think that kind of comes with the fact that you're more than likely doing this during the peak season as well. So there's going to be tons of competition to get those kind of hotel spaces and all that as well. So it's if you can kind of get one of those economical, more budget hostel kind of stays or something, great option to explore. The second question we had come in was, how do you avoid getting hit by cars? You kind of touched on it. There's, not really any truck traffic or anything along this route. It sounds like the infrastructure was kind of done up, so there's a nice shoulder. But yeah, is there any tips and tricks for not getting flattened while you're out there?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, like I say, there's a big wide shoulder. I would say 95% of the way. Just a few spots where there's like some turning lanes, you'll have to go single file for sure. Even given the big wide shoulders, it's definitely recommended to go single file. That just gives you the most room around yourself. Stick to the right hand side of the shoulder, away from the traffic. Regular shoulder checks, make sure you can see what's coming. I know a lot of people like to listen to music these days, but it's definitely, as a safety thing, it's not recommended because you want to be able to hear the traffic coming. But yeah, each to their own there. And then, yeah, quite often people will start together as a group, but then split up into smaller groups of one or two and then regroup, so quite often during the day. So, but if you are riding in a peloton arrangement, which doesn't happen very often, but say there's 4 or 5 or 6 of you in a line, then obviously you have all those safety rules that go along with that because you got to look out for each other. The first person has to tell the next person what's coming. If there's a thing on the road, or, the one at the back is looking out for traffic coming. All that sort of stuff. But like I say, most people are not doing that because they're just taking their time riding by themselves or with small groups of friends that they've met along the way. I guess the last thing was just ride within your limits. So, I mean, if you're new to riding, obviously don't go 80 kilometers per hour down that 16-kilometer hill. Try and keep the brakes, on and off a little bit. Keep that speed under control. And even if you are a really good rider, you still want to keep in mind that we are in a remote location where it's quite tricky for help to arrive. So keeping your speed on the controllable level is probably the best thing you can do. The riders are basically, you're responsible for your own safety mostly, and that's the best recommendation.
I think it really comes down to if you're familiar with biking at all, which you kind of have to be to a certain degree. If you don't know how to ride a bike, this isn't going to be the tour for you, but it's just general. From the sounds of it, it's more or less general bike safety, awareness, all that kind of stuff. For people who are really experienced, I know it can be one of those things where you maybe not forget the basics, but you kind of put them in the back of your mind because you don't need to use them all that often. At the same time, like you said, this is a remote location. Anything can happen. And it's always better just to err on the side of caution because, the last thing you want to do is get airlifted out of somewhere or whatever it may be. So it's a great point to bring up that it is remote and you should always just err on the side of caution for sure. Last of the pre-submitted questions we have here, what is the average number of hours on the road per day? I would imagine this kind of varies depending on skill level, the kind of the different group makeups, group dynamics. Some people probably want to maybe cycle a bit faster. Some are a little bit slower and take their time. But if you were to say an average on the number of hours on the road?
Yeah, so the way we do it, it would be tempting just to sort of let everyone fly and everyone could do their own pace. But the way the support system works best is actually my main job is to slow everyone down. So because then I can keep everyone together, keep an eye on people, provide that support when they need it. Rather than
you got to be the mom of the group, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, that's right. So in effect, it basically standardizes every day and every tour. We hit the road. We have breakfast at 8. Hit the road by 9. The sun's popping over the mountains shortly after that, so you start to warm up. And then really there's no point in getting to the hotel before 3 because they don't let us in because they're just they're on a push to try and clean all the rooms. And so typically we try and structure it so we're out there from 9 till 4. And then obviously there's a couple of hours difference there. Depending on what happens, maybe we'll leave at 9:30, maybe we get there at 3 to 3:30. But generally that's the day. And then of course you're not riding all that time. You're only riding probably half.
Yeah, you have breaks, lunches, that kind of stuff in between.
Yeah, hour for lunch, half an hour here for a snack, another 15 minutes a couple of times just to check in with me. But that's the general daily flow.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty good structure. You have it nailed down pretty well. Moving on to some of the chat questions that have been submitted. Joanna said, sorry that I'm late. So she popped in a little bit after we had started. She said she missed the daily mileage and the climbing, so the elevation along the route. I don't know if you could maybe just give a quick recap of the distance and elevation each of the days, maybe if you can.
Yeah, definitely. Day 1, 50K. Day 2 is 100. Day 3 is 85, and then day 4 is 60 to Banff or 85 to Canmore. The elevation, there's a really good elevation map, I believe, which we could supply to you. Might be online there, but that'll give a better idea of things. But it basically goes from about 1,300 meters in Jasper, could be off by a couple hundred, goes up to 2,000 at Sunrock the Pass, back down to about 1,400 at crossing. This is all meters above sea level. And then from there you go up and over Bow Pass, which is just over 2,000 again, so 2,050, 2,100 meters. And then you're back down to Lake Louise, which my guess is probably 1,500 or, and then you probably lose 1,400 maybe, and then you lose another 100 meters maybe to Banff or Canmore. So there's really not much elevation in that last day. It's more just undulating, gentle ups and downs, or flats.
Yeah, so there's a lot of variety when it comes to the itinerary there.
Yeah.
Moving on, we have Travis asks, what's the minimum age for this tour? Can a family with teens book? I think by the sounds of it, family with teens, it sounds like it would be right up their alley. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's definitely a good option. We've had that happen quite a few times. Yeah, as long as there's a group, like a family group, I think, then everyone's they're sort of supporting themselves within the bigger support, just in case there's a speed difference. But quite often the young kids are faster than the oldies. So usually there's no. I've never come across a problem yet. As far as a minimum age, it's hard to say. I'd sort of just take it year by year, case by case. But you're probably right. Somewhere in the teens is probably where we'd start, even like just for someone coming by themselves. I think we've had a 15-year-old once for sure do it with a family, and he brushed it. He did fine. He actually had a bit of a sporting background, but yeah, you could definitely go younger. It's just a case of what sort of history the younger person has, and whether if they're really into biking, then they'll be fine. Again, if they've never seen a bike before, then maybe this isn't the tour to start with. But
yeah, it's a little bit more experience versus age, kind of. It's not necessarily that there's something too young, but it kind of depends more so how familiar they are and how long they've kind of been doing these type of rides, right? Travis also doubles down. He asks, have you ever had guests bring a tandem bike, like their own tandem bike? So that's, I guess if you're going with a family with teens, you'd probably have a couple of tandem bikes. That would be an interesting thing to see along this route, I would think. But is that something you've ever experienced?
Yes, for sure. Yes, not often, but definitely a couple of times a year we'll have people turn up with tandem bikes. Definitely, you want to arrange that in advance, but we have a 16-foot enclosed trailer that's been specifically designed and put together myself and a friend to transport people's fancy, expensive machines. So it's more set up for regular bikes. But having said that, if we know in advance, we can add various ways of securing the tandem bike in the trailer. No problems. It's more a matter of as long as you can get the bike to Edmonton, and from the end of the ride somewhere else, then we can transport it between the middle.
That's the big thing. It's the logistical part, the before and after. But anything else you guys are good with, that's good to know.
Yeah.
The last ones here are from John. He asks, if we fly into Edmonton and stay the night in a hotel and need to reassemble our bike, does that happen before we're picked up in the morning or after?
Yeah, it's a good idea to do that before. Unfortunately,
just to make sure everything's all set up.
Yeah, and you want to just make sure the airline hasn't done any nasty stuff to your bike. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not really available on that sort of Thursday night to help out, but until Friday morning. But there's lots of bike shops in Edmonton, so if you did need help, just be a matter of Googling bike shops. So there's lots of once you get booked in, I can set you up with any contacts I have. or if you're capable of doing it yourself, of course that's an option. And then once we hit the road on Friday, it's good to hit the road without having any you had any problems with your bike before we took off. It would take extra time, and we might not have the resources to fix it quickly. And then on the tail end, of course, when we're packing up in Canmore or Banff, I can definitely help out at that point. Go to the tours there could be a team of us getting you all packed up. We can carry your bike boxes along with us in the trailer as well. So that's all possible.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I guess it's one of the things that we always kind of mention to people too. If there's ever a tour you're doing where you're bringing any of your own equipment, it's always best just to make sure everything beforehand is in working order and is, as up to kind of spec as possible, because the last thing you want to do is show up the first day of the tour and you can't actually take part in it, because that would be terrible. So if you can, just make sure that everything is all set up and ready to go for the day of, so that everything goes as smooth as possible. John's second question is, are bike lights required or suggested? I think based off the times, it doesn't sound like it's leaving too early or too late. But would you need bike lights for this tour?
Yeah, I wouldn't say required, but definitely recommended.
Okay.
Just a rear red flashing light for sure. But the front one would be totally optional. But definitely a rear flashing light. I would almost say, count on bringing one of those. If you rent a bike from us, we'll have one attached to the rental bike. And it definitely helps with visibility on the road. Those lights these days are so good, you can see people from a mile away.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of. Oh, sorry, we have one more question from John actually that came in just right at the bell there. With no cell coverage, does Ben carry a sat phone or similar? I think you kind of touched on it. People who are actually cycling will have a two-way radio. What do you carry yourself in terms of while the tour is taking place?
Yeah, so I got one of those InReach satellite communicators. So that pairs with a cell phone, and I can basically text out via satellite to the emergency services if we ever need anything. And then I believe these days it's pretty fancy that the new iPhones actually have as soon as they go out of cell coverage, they pop up with a message saying, press this button for satellite. So satellite capability. So
it's pretty nice to stay connected.
We're pretty fancy these days. But we have options for emergencies.
Yeah, sounds like you got all your bases covered in terms of support along the route. So thanks for that question, John, because I think that's a pretty important one. And that wraps up all the questions that we had come in. I want to say, first of all, thanks to Ben for being here and kind of walking us through this amazing trip. Sounds like a fantastic experience. Like I mentioned earlier, it's definitely on my bucket list now. It's something that I want to take part in, and I'm probably going to do it at some point when I get out west again. But also thanks to everyone for being a part of the webinar, for sending in some questions, whether it was beforehand or during the chat. Those are always appreciated because it just helps everyone get a better understanding of what all goes into these tours, what it means to book them, to take part in them, all the different logistics along the way. So thank you very much for sending those in. If anybody has any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll hang on for a couple minutes afterwards. I'll also leave my email and our company email as well, so you can kind of pass any further questions along or any inquiries that you might have. But yeah, thanks a lot, Ben, for joining us. I think this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thanks again for everyone that tuned in, and thanks for your extra questions too. It's great to hear people are interested, and can't wait for the summer to come.
But you heard it there. Ben's waiting for everybody, so everyone get on booking a trip, and we'll get out there to Jasper as soon as we can. But yeah, thanks again. This has been another edition of the 10 Adventures Adventure More webinar series. My name is Alex, and we'll see you in the next webinar. Take care.